All right, passive traders, welcome to another edition of the Option Genius podcast. Today I'm here with my good friend Justin Boyum, who is a U.S. Army veteran. He's also a very successful businessman, speaker, and a professional and executive coach. Being a veteran himself, he does look out for the other veterans and their families and tries to help them find fulfilling careers, create strong relationships, and live joyful lives. How you doing, Justin?
Doing great, man.
What you been up to lately?
Well, lately I have been doing some events, going around talking with other veterans and professionals out there, just trying to learn more about how people are dealing with our new COVID era that we're in and dealing with lockdowns and the different strategies that are available to them to accelerate in their careers or their business.
Awesome. Sweet. So the reason I wanted to bring Justin on is because as a veteran, he goes through and he's been trained um, in making quick decisions. And as we are traders, we need to have the ability to take limited information and act on that. And some people I've talked to in the past, they're like, well, I want to know that everything is going to be perfectly exactly the way I need it to before I make a trade. And that's just not how it works. We need to take imperfect information. We have to be okay with not knowing everything, and that knowing that we might be wrong on our assessment and still be able to adapt. And so when I was talking to Justin, he was saying the same things, and I was like, man, this is some really good stuff. So when he talks to his students and his clients, he talks about how to be high performance and how to make those quick decisions and how to make the decisions that will put you in the position that you can excel. So, Justin, tell me something about the stuff that you learned in the military. Like, how do you go from, because you were active, right? You were in a war zone.
Right. I was on active duty. I did a tour in Iraq during Iraqi freedom in Basra,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, absolutely. So realistically, to talk about exactly what you mentioned, right, being able to make quick decisions. I mean, one of the first things that they teach their leaders and their officers and the sergeants is there is the worst decision that you can make is no decision, right? So they teach you to be able to really make decisions, and you got to use the information that you have in front of you. And that doesn't mean that every decision you make is always going to work out perfectly. But the worst thing to do is to be inaction. And I think one of the more beautiful illustrations of this is in the HBO series that they did for Band of Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They showed the Battle of Bastogne, which is a very key battle in World War II, and they had a new lieutenant that was less decisive, that was going to lead this effort initially, and a lot of the soldiers already kind of knew that too, and so there was a lot of concern about, like, are we going to be able to handle this? But sure enough, they go into action, and that's when the combat starts, and he completely freezes, and it's causing them to take on casualties and have all these issues. And they send in another captain from another unit just to run in there and take over operations, and he quickly figures out, where's everybody at? I've got to make a decision. We get going, and then they go and they actually complete this mission, which was effectively, you can really pinpoint that's where the Allied forces really won the war, was winning this particular battle. And it was because somebody came in and he just made decisions, right? And it wasn't always perfect, and he did some crazy things in that battle. Go watch the series if you want to see it, or read the book. It's a fantastic book. But I mean, realistically, the difference was that he went and made decisions when he got into action. And yeah, there's going to be risks that you have to take, and you have to just do whatever. You have to kind of calculate that in your head quick enough, like what's an acceptable amount of risk, and you got to go. But obviously in a war effort, you've got to make that decision, or you're going to lose the war, right? So there's a little bit of a raised stakes there. But I think in general, when I talk with my students, whether they're building a business, following their careers, making more sales for their book of business, wherever it is, they've got to be able to raise that necessity to that kind of warlike effort. Like, if I don't go do this, these are the potential results or lack of results I'm going to see. And there are a number of ways to attach meaning to that. But absolutely, you got to be able to make decisions and go. And the worst thing you can do is do nothing.
Yeah. So I mean, like, there's two things that you mentioned there. One of the things is that we find that people are, they want to be successful. They want to make more money trading. They want to live a better life and have a better lifestyle, but they are afraid to get started.
Mm-hmm.
They're afraid to make that first step and get in because it's like, oh, I don't know this and I don't know how to do this and this is confusing to me. And then there's that other person who's a little bit further down the line, and he has put on a trade and he has followed the rules and he's doing everything properly, but then the market, like the market does, or the stock, it doesn't cooperate.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the person doesn't know what to do and they're flustered, and they're taking losses. It's not the same as in a war zone. We're not dying here. We're not getting hurt. But when you lose money, it kind of feels the same way.
Well, I
And
mean, you got to think
so,
about the ripple effects of that, of course, too, right? Like, what does that mean for your family? What does that mean to the people that you're connected to, right? What does that keep you from being able to invest in, right? Maybe you're the kind of person that likes to invest in charities that like supports things like my community, like the veteran community, or what have you, right? Like you not being able to perform at a high level, which is why
right,
I love to talk about high performance, because in order to be successful at anything, especially when you're dealing with something that can be volatile like a market, you've got to really be very highly clear and be able to take that bold action, because there's real meaning behind like, what if I don't go do, like, I look at this as like, say like I was somebody who was in like cold call sales,
mm-hmm,
and like anybody who's ever in cold calling, if you've ever, I don't know if you've been in cold calling before, but you got to go and make like 100 calls a day, and maybe 5 of them will pick up, right? Depending on what kind of
right,
businesses you're calling or how good you are your outreach. But in general, when people are first starting out, at least you're looking at like a 2 to 5% like success rate of even getting to talk to a human being that doesn't hang up on you.
right,
And that can be difficult, but we'll break that down to say 20 calls. If you stopped at 19, that 20th call might be the person that said yes.
mm,
And whatever solution it is, you're selling product solution, right? By not making that next call, you've sacrificed that other person's joy or their ability to get what they want. And who does that affect, right? The people that are not near them, right? So it's important that you be able to do those things and be able to overcome that fear of rejection or failure. Like you might get in the market, like, oh yeah, I had this happen one time and it didn't go well, right? Well, what if I stopped cold calling after the first person that called me an idiot on the phone and hung up on me because I
mm-hmm,
didn't like the way that made me feel? Well, that kept me from making the next call, where I could have served somebody at a very high level and gotten them what they needed to do, which not only helps them, but helps my business, helps my family,
right.
and all the different ripple effects that go from there. So,
Okay. So how would you walk somebody through that situation? So I'll try to put it back in the trading scenario. So there's a guy who is in a new environment, doing something new, not too experienced, hasn't been through the ups and downs before, but he has made the jump. He's very scared, but he made the jump. He's done some trades, but now all of a sudden, because like right now, what's going on in the stock market has been going up. For the
sure.
last several years, it's just been going almost straight up. And now, after COVID, we have some turbulence. We have a big market drop. A lot of people got scared. But then, even after that, the market rallied back higher. And now everybody and their brother is wanting to trade and buying stocks and telling, oh, I'm making so much money, which that's
Mm-hmm.
great. But all you're doing, I mean, you're not doing it properly. You're just jumping in and getting that, you're getting
Right.
some quick gains because that's just what the market is doing, just going straight up.
Right.
That it's easy to do right now. But when it turns, and I do believe it's going to turn, pretty soon. There's a lot of uncertain activities and events coming up, the election and all that. So let's say somebody has done that. They don't have that much experience. They got in, they placed some trades, they've made some money. They're a little bit maybe overconfident, but now the trade turns around
Mm-hmm.
and they're at a point where, okay, I need to make a decision. Either I need to get out of my trade, or I need to buckle down and stay in, or I need to change my trade or adjust it somehow. What
Right.
can you walk them through, or do you have some steps that they could take or some questions they could ask themselves?
Right. So I think that that kind of keys in. So most people, and it's kind of what we've kind of been talking about as we've been going through this, there are kind of 3 major areas that cause most people to fail or quit at their goals.
Mm-hmm.
And the very first one, I think that we've been kind of talking around now, is fear. Fear is something that really drives a lot of decision makings. And sometimes when we're in a place where we're operating out of place of fear, we tend to make bad decisions. We tend to make decisions that don't really serve us.
Definitely.
Or you might just go quit, right? Like, hey, I got into this trading because I wanted to make, I don't know, 10K a month. I don't know what the average person, if they really commit to this, tends to make. But let's say they want to make 10K a month, allows me to quit my job, allows me to really, freelance my time better or manage my time to be able to spend more time with my family or retire or whatever I'm going to do.
Right.
So I would kind of come back to what was that original goal that you had, because fear, like sometimes it's like, it could be like, hey, I'm concerned about what the outcome may be. Maybe it's not what I'm going to want, right? Maybe I go invest this money in trading and I actually end up losing money. Maybe it's going to be harder than I expect. Maybe they're a little bit afraid of the process that's going to be a little hard, or maybe they've got some stories in their background films like, well, I've always kind of failed at some of these things, or I had a bad experience before, so I'm not going to go and do this again, even if they've learned a strategy from someone like you that says, yeah, this can be successful if you do it right. So how do you overcome that fear? And I think that you'd have to really go back and attach that, have the clarity around of why you're doing what you're doing. Now, certainly you want to follow a great strategy and you want to have a really good, effective plan. But just like in the military, right? Like, I mean, sometimes we can have excellent plans and we've got the greatest military in the world because they've done a lot of the research and they make sure that they look at what's acceptable risk to them and like what we need to do to be okay with something. But even with that, like if you read any military book, like stuff like hits the fan, right? And you got to be able to deal with that and be able to make decisions and move forward. Sometimes you're going to take some losses along the way, and sometimes it can really work out great for you. And so what I would go back and look at somebody, so in this case of if I was going to work with somebody who's a trader and going like, yeah, I really wanted to make this 10K a month, but I'm really afraid of making this decision because the market's volatile. And I'm kind of like, I don't know if I want to get out of this. And I said, okay, well, why don't you write me a check for $10,000?
Okay.
Because by not making the decisions and staying with your commitment, that's what you're doing. You just go ahead and write me that check for this month. You go tell your family that you wrote a check for $10,000 because you don't want to play. Right?
Right. Yeah. Because you're losing. You're leaving it on the table. It's the same as not having it.
And I wasn't working with a trader, but I had that with somebody who was a sales representative. He was a real estate guy, and he's like, hey, I wanted to be able to sell this much real estate so I could make this amount of income. And he was thinking, it's like, man, this is really hard. It's very competitive. Like I live in a major metro, so I can throw a rock and hit another real estate agent right now. And he's like, man, I think maybe I need to go another direction. But the problem is that fear was going to follow him to whatever other opportunity he was going to go to. So it's about whether or not did he really want to commit to this. He got into real estate because he liked be able to help people, find that solution, that dream home, and that lifestyle, and obviously allows him to do his lifestyle, manage the time that he wants to.
Right.
But by saying I'm not sure about this, or I'm not going to make that decision, or I might just get out of this altogether, I was like, well, you said you want to make 10K a month. Just go ahead and write me that check, and go home and tell your wife that's what you did today. Because that's what you're doing. And I've been there too. I've been in a place where I was in a sales role, or I was trying to start my business, and that's my goals. And by not taking action, I might as well have just said, that's what I need to just give up today.
Yeah.
And that keeps me from being able to go to donate to the charities that I think are important, be able to take my kids on the vacations that they deserve, send them to private school if I so choose, or whatever, right? And that's the ripple effect of not making decisions, right? Sometimes you might step on it and it might not work out like you want, but all that's going to end up happening by getting out is that you have regrets. Oh, that could have worked out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You want to be smart about it, right? Hey, look at the market and look at the information that you have available to you and try to make the best decisions you have. But there's no guarantees, certainly not in trading, just as much as there's no guarantees that my business is going to just do anything, right? I got to go perform at a level and do the things that are important, but actually go out there and do it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the hardest part. And then like the thing is that, we teach all our people to like do it in a way where you're putting the odds in your favor. So you're lining it up so you have as much success built in before you get started. But there's always that fear there. There's always that thing. So I guess what that means is like you bring it back to what the goal is, what the why is, right? Yeah. So that overcomes that initial fear.
And I would agree with you about like give yourself the best odds. They do that in the military. Like it just like when like in basic training they talk about squad tactics, right? They don't let you go and schedule like an operation unless we have 3-to-1 like odds and personnel, right? Like if you've got a 10-person unit and there's another 10-person unit that you're going to go and ambush, like that's not good odds. They're like, we're not taking that risk, right? So you can establish your boundaries of what's good for you,
right? What's acceptable
within that system. Okay, but if you said, hey, I set this goal, okay, well then you need to adjust. Like, okay, well, what kinds of trades am I going to make? Right. So like, I talk to a real estate agent. I'll go, okay, well, you got to sell this much inventory. Well, what if you just instead worked in a higher level of real estate and then you don't have to make as many sales,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or, hey, that's a complicated market. Okay, well, maybe you can go into an that you sell more inventory, right? But you have to sell more to reach that same goal. There's different ways to do whichever one,
Yeah.
but you've got to figure out what's your framework that you're going to work within. And these are my boundaries. I think in the military, we call that like the left and right limits, right? Like, okay, anything in this field of vision is what I'm responsible for. Anything outside of that, I don't go past that.
Interesting. Okay, that's cool. I like that. The left and right limits.
Yeah.
So I'm going to focus on whatever's in front of me. So like one of the things we have people do is we do like a personality test and a risk assessment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how much risk am I um, good with? You know, am I a risk taker, like a real gambler, or am I just like, hey, I'm super conservative. If I lose $1, I'm gonna have a heart attack, kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so based on that, then they decide what strategies we work with them. But
Yeah.
so yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so but now let's say we're in the midst of the battle.
Mm-hmm.
And things are not going exactly as we plan. You know, like you said, the stuff is hitting the fan. Now, how do I make the decisions to make what do I do to make the proper decision to help
Right.
myself?
Well, I think ultimately, again, you're going to have to look at the parameters of with your framework, right? So I look at this as, I think a great, I love to use this analogy all the time. Have you ever seen the movie Moneyball,
Yeah.
the baseball movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
We talked about basically the order to win a baseball game was I don't need to go get all this flashy stuff. I just need to make sure that I score more than the other team. And the best way to do that is to make sure that my guys are getting on base.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so basically what you're looking at is just more turns on base or more at bats, right? Or however you want to look at that. And so I always just talk to my people if they're looking to build a business, right? So MLM, trading, whatever you have to get on base, right? And give yourself the ultimate opportunity to do that and win. So you might have to look at and look, there's military operations where they have withdrawn. Okay. And there's been like major motion pictures about it. Like We Were Soldiers, right? That was a battle that did not go well. Right. And they had to figure out how they're going to get out of that and move on or go do the next thing. And sometimes you have to make that assessment where this particular opportunity isn't working out. We need to cut losses, and you need to be comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
What that means, hey, okay, I might be taking a loss here, but what you don't do is you let that stop you from getting back in the game. Hey, I got to go to this next at bat.
Right.
I'm sure anybody who's in I keep going back to real estate because it's an easy analogy because it's about investing and stuff. But hey, I'm sure not every investment worked out.
Yep.
Right. So sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't go. You can do the best you can to give yourself the best opportunity to make money.
Right.
But at the end of the day, when it comes to when you're making those trades, you just, again, more at bats. The more you do within your framework, whatever kinds of stocks that you use, you can do the backwards math on that and what's it going to take to win. Right. The Oakland A's in the baseball analogy, they didn't win every game. They just give themselves the best chance to win every time.
And for those of you guys who are listening and have read the book, I did not talk to Justin beforehand because Justin, I talk about that as one of the pillars, the Moneyball, getting on base.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, well, what we do is what we teach is, making very small conservative bets, but just winning over and over again. So our trading strategy wins like about 80%, 90% of the time. So we're not hitting home runs. We're not trying to double, triple our money every time, but we're putting on small bets. So we're making 10%, 10%, 10% in an easy way, in a way that doesn't take up a lot of stress, a lot of time. And we're just sitting back and, making 10%, 10%. And that really adds up to a lot of money.
And that's a fantastic strategy, right?
Yeah.
Again, and using the Moneyball analogy, I'm glad that we see eye to eye there. I love that, right? And it's just a matter of, hey, you just put yourself in the position to win. That's what the military does. They put themselves in the best possible chance to succeed at a mission, right? Back in the World War II times, right, there was a lot different scenarios, but nowadays, even more, we go to a military operation, we expect to win. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's because they've put in those parameters and that framework to make sure that they'll win. And the same thing, it sounds like what you're teaching your students is, hey, give yourself the best chance to win. And then, hey, if something doesn't go well, that's okay. You got to figure out if you're going to cut your losses or you're going to stick it out. You can determine that, but just be at peace with your decision and don't let that be the thing that holds you back, right? Like, hey, I got rejected at the bar by the pretty girl. Doesn't mean I don't go ask another girl, right?
Right. Right. Okay. So what it seems like I'm hearing you saying is that in order to get in, right, to get to bat, you gotta overcome that initial inertia, and you gotta
Hmm.
have a deeper meaning. And I think, and I tell a lot of people this is like they ask, and we ask them, and they're like, hey, why do you want to learn how to trade? And they're like, oh, I want to make more money. It's never
Hmm.
about the money. There's always something deeper there. It's, I want to be more successful. I want to be respected. I want to take my family on vacations or whatnot. So that's the first step. And the second step, once you're in the game, once you're in the field, and things are happening, you have your, what was it, the Y and the Z, or the X
So
and
we'd say
Y?
left and right limits.
Left and right limits. Okay, so you have your limits. You focus on what's in front of you. You don't worry about all the noise, because in trading, there's noise every single day.
Mm.
There's, oh, Trump sent out a tweet, and this person is
Yeah.
doing this, and the stock is, this stock over here, and this guy said this is going to happen, and that guy said that's going to happen. So there's tons of noise. So I like that. The left and the right limits. You focus only on what's in your field of vision. You don't worry about anything else,
Mm-hmm.
and you have your set trading plan, or in your terminology, I believe you called it, what was it when you mentioned that they, before they go into battle, they have their
Oh, they just have their acceptable risk, right? Or their
acceptable risk
framework for
reward.
what their framework for what is like, so, like I said, in that scenario I used, like you might be in a small squad and you're going through like a reconnaissance, right? You're going through this area. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I see this is an area that we might do an ambush. And then they go and they see that the element that the enemy element that they're looking at is twice the size of what they have. That's not an acceptable risk. You let them go
Right.
by.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Same thing what you're talking about. Hey, I'm not taking huge risks. I'm taking more at bats at smaller risks so that
Right.
I can protect myself long term, right? Which
Yeah.
is a great framework to use.
Right.
And it's the same thing, right? Hey, left and right limits. Okay, so then I see the shiny object. Oh, this big stock might be something big, but it's in a different kind of market.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to determine, is that the kind of thing that's going to be useful to you? Is that helpful? Is that the main kind of thing that's going to move you? Is taking that kind of risk moving you towards your goal, or using the same strategy to build over time so that you have that protection that you're looking for, right? I would suggest, depending on what you're teaching your students or what their goals are, it's like, hey, don't go off at that big shiny object, right? Unless you've done the research and you know that you're going to give yourself the best chance to win.
Right.
Stick to what you've got there. Stay at what's your acceptable amount of risk.
Right.
If
So
you're
it's
good with
not
the
like,
risk, great. Like, try it out. I know there's no, like, when one of my clients come to me and they said they want to go do something crazy, or they might think it's crazy to them, I'm like, hey, that's not crazy. Let's talk it out. Let's figure out how we can make it happen. We've got
mm-hmm.
to figure out what's acceptable. Is this serving your purpose?
Right.
Right. In the military writing concepts, right, it always starts with mission, right? Hey, this is the mission that we have. Here's our situation that we're in. Here's how we're going to execute that. Here's what we're going to do if something goes wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's all planned out. It's all structured in that way to, again, give them the best chance to win. Or if they're going to lose, they do it without losing a lot.
Mm-hmm. And then they have the right tools.
Right
That's
now, of
also,
course, you got to have the right
yeah.
tools and the resources and the training in order to go do those things. But it
So
all
what
starts
was,
with, hey, what's the situation?
all
Here's our
right,
mission. Let's go
what
do it.
was your position in the Army?
So I had a various positions. So I was an officer. So at the end of the day, most officers are leaders, right? They're more management style, more strategic thinking. So
Mm-hmm.
technically, I was trained as a logistics officer,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was really about maneuvering equipment, making sure people had what they needed. How do we move, X equipment to Y location? But I also held roles such as company command, where I was dealing with over 200 people with various types of departments and equipment,
Right.
and moving them to missions and goals here and there. When I was deployed, I was an executive officer for an intel and sustainment company. So basically dealing with all of the like super secret squirrel intelligence equipment, making sure it was functioning and that they had what they need to be able to support, the mission in Iraq and do their job. And so it was very unique experience, not something I expected. When you go in the military, you think you're trained for one thing and then end up
Right.
doing something kind of a little bit different. So you always got to be in that place of dealing with ambiguity. I
Mm-hmm.
think the same thing applies outside of the military,
Right.
where you've got to be able to deal with things that maybe you don't have a huge clear picture of it, but operate within your framework and the way that you like to structure yourself, and you're going to do better than you otherwise would have. Which is why I love to teach with my students that idea of high performance. Like, how do we structure you so that you can make sound, clear decisions? You know exactly where you're headed, and you know how you're going to go get there.
Okay, so let's go to there now. But how do you do that? How do you become high performance? How do you have huge success without all the information?
Sure. So in We can go back to the Moneyball thing. I think this really works for this, and we kind of tie it in with the military. So the military is really the best one in the world because there is almost nothing that's a surprise. Our military doesn't do a lot of things that are shocking, right? Sometimes maybe on a particular mission, something could kind of go a little bit different than we planned, but everything has a structure. There's a standard operating procedure document for everything within every unit, all the way down to the individual level. Here's how you're going to operate, down to what you wear every day, right? I wear this every day. I've got my canteen on one side. I've got my ammunition on the other. This is, so everybody knows where everything is. Right. If I've got a question on how something works, there's a book or a regulation to tell me how to do it. Right. And it's all very systematized, right? They send you to boot camp first, right? And the reason they send you to boot camp first, we're going to send you through the ringer of here's what it's like to be in the military. Make sure your mind is right. Right. So if
because you have to build that discipline, you got to be able to
have that discipline. You've got to be able to be comfortable around firearms and dealing with, we always called it embrace the suck. Like sometimes you might be sleep deprived. You might have to go through this, you've got to low crawl and get in the dirt. You got to do all those things. You've got to have your mind and your foundations right for that. Well, the same thing applies out of the military. You've got to be highly structured, and the world's highest performers in the world, like measured by study, anybody you think of, they all demonstrate certain characteristics and habits that allow them to succeed. It's not a super huge secret about sometimes you might be lucky and you've invented the super widget that nobody ever thought of. Like you might get the next iPhone, right? That changes everything. I mean, most people that's not going to necessarily happen. You might be creative and that's awesome if you are, but at the end of the day, you also still have to be able to perform at a level that allows you to build a business around that and build that kind of influence. And it starts when we start on a personal level. Again, we go back to clarity. High performers have demonstrated the ability to seek tremendous amounts of clarity. They know specifically what they want, why they want it, and how they're going to go get it. And they're really connected to it. All right, go back to the Simon Sinek stuff. Start with why, right? You've got to be connected to that.
Right.
Second thing that high performing individuals are able to do is they're able to generate energy. It takes a lot of energy to be a successful person. And most people won't go do the things that they need to do in order to perform at that consistency type of level, right? If you're be able to build your business, it might take you for a little while to go 80 hours a week to go develop all of the marketing and everything and putting everything in place. Well, can you maintain the energy on that? Most people, again, we get back to the three things that stop you. First one was fear. Second one's fatigue. People will just stop because it's hard, either physically or mentally or emotionally.
Right.
And they'll fall back to what's comfortable. Well, high performers are able to generate energy over that. Can you imagine what you would be able to do, Alan, if you had 5 times the energy you do now? Right?
Yeah. So by energy, you mean the food we eat, the way we sleep, all that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's not just physical, it's mental, right? It's emotional. Yeah. I mean, how much sleep are you getting?
Right.
It's one of the first things I usually talk about, when someone's coming to me that they can't reach their goals. Like, well, how much sleep are you getting? Right? What are you eating?
Right.
How much are you exercising? How are you maintaining yourself? Do you meditate? How do you renew? Right? How do you maintain that level of momentum so that you can overcome those times when it feels like you don't want to do it? Right? We've got a multi-billion-dollar industry for people teaching people how to lose weight.
Right.
Is that a secret? Do you know how to lose weight?
Yeah. Everybody knows how to lose weight.
Everybody knows how to lose weight, but you've got all these personal trainers and coaches teaching people how to do it and helping them do it because they can't generate that energy and that mental focus themselves.
Yeah.
That's what high performers can do. Right. And then the next part is that we can use to overcome those challenges is you got to be able to be productive. You've got to be able to increase your productivity.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, you can't necessarily so when we talk about being productive, right? Sometimes it's oh, I got to do all these things. I got to work harder. Well, not necessarily. It's more or less, am I working on the things that are moving me forward? Am I being productive on things that are actually useful, right? Limit those distractions, stay in that left and right limits.
Okay.
I would suggest I talk to people going okay, if you got one project to do, let's figure out what the priorities are. And if there's anything on your list that doesn't actually move that project forward, then it's not that important.
Right. So this is kind of like the working on the 80-20 or the one thing
80-20
that
rule, however you want to say it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we got three, right? We got know your why, we got increase your energy, and then we got increase your productivity
Mm-hmm.
by knowing what to focus on and ignoring everything else
Right.
and all the noise.
Right. And that's and then the next part is and here's the thing that's I love this for the military style of analogy here. High performers are able to raise necessity. And what I mean by that, right? We go back to the war effort, right? It was highly necessary that they completed that mission because people would die, right? We all might be speaking German. That level of necessity. And high performers are able to go, hey, I need to complete this mission. I need to go build this business. I need to go make those trades. I need to go be highly focused in the way that I operate myself. Because if I don't, my family's going to have to move out. Or I'm not going to be able to go and serve the people that need my help.
Right.
I'd be able to like and lift that up. It's kind of connecting to the why still, but it's really attaching that this has to happen. Like there's
Yeah.
no turning back. It's
So this is
yes.
like focusing on maybe the negative and burning all the boats, saying, I don't have a choice. My back is to the
Right,
wall.
burning the boat.
It's either do or die time.
But yeah, and the high performers are able to do that for their projects, right? Because it might seem like, well, hey, if I don't make this trade, that's not going to be the end of the world. Well, you need to be able to show up like it would be.
Interesting. Cool. So how long does it take to get all these steps in place?
Well, it certainly depends on what you want to focus on. Where is it that you've got to decide, like, what is it that's really holding me back? We can always do more of a lot of these things, but it's really about putting together systems, right? Military style. Let me put structure in place that allows me to put these things in as a habit that I can repeat on process. I can be very deliberate with them. It's not something that I just inherently have. Some people are a little bit more, risk averse than others, right? Some people are really able to go out there and be courageous and go take bold action just because that's kind of in their nature. And some people maybe aren't, but we can always be doing more and you can do it as a habit. You can actually make it happen. It's not something that you just inherently have like all this, right? Like I will never be 6'10" and in the NBA, right? I can't control that. I can't control how old I am. I can't control, I can't control gender. I can't control a lot of things, but I can control how productive I am.
Right.
I can control my sleep schedule if my kids allow it. Right. But I can do a whole lot of things that I do have control over that's going to give me a way better chance of getting on base than somebody else.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, in general, I work with my clients. I have a number of ways. I generally start new clients off on a 12-week program where we implement all of these strategies and habits over time and apply it towards what that goal is. Hey, I'm going to go be a day trader and retire.
Right.
Right. I'm going to make this much money because it's going to allow me to do X, Y, and Z. Great. Hey, I really want to go and meet the love of my life and be the best husband and father I could ever be. Great. In order to achieve any goal, you've got to be at a level where you're performing as a habit. Can you get lucky and buy a lotto ticket? Sure you can. Is that repeatable? Probably not.
Which one would you say is the most important out of the four?
Well, the four that we've mentioned so far.
Are there more? You have a lot more?
I do. I have two more.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, we've got, and I kind of alluded to it, right? So high performers also demonstrate a lot of courage, right? They're able to step outside their comfort zone. Right. It's not comfortable to go do something brand new to you or be able to continue to move forward when maybe it's not going so well. And so you've got to figure out how can I attach again, go back to that meeting. How can I show up as a more courageous self? Right. And then the last step, most high performers, and again, this is something that it's just obvious when you think about it, I think anyway, but high performers are able to develop influence, right? How can I go get the people that are going to help me get where I want to go and I can bring them along with me? How can I pour into the other people and continue to build my sphere of influence? If you think about anybody successful you've ever met, they didn't get there by themselves.
Right, right.
I don't care who they are, even if they're one of those people that seems more independent and reclusive. They got somebody helping them to get to where they wanted to go.
Of course. Yeah. Nobody's an island.
But I would say the number one reason, and most people, even if they think that they're mostly clear, and I would be in this boat too, is clarity. It starts there. If we can't get you there, and that's why it's the first step in the journey when I work with somebody,
right.
and we refer back to it throughout the entire program, is that we've got to be able to seek clarity and use it as a habit and continue to develop clarity.
And does that change over time? Do you see from people?
Well, some people start with different goals, of course. And so some people might think that they want to operate in their space in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time they mature and they take advantage, right? It's the clarity is what they make of it. There's no like set answer, right? So for instance, like, so if you told me that you wanted to be, a business owner, I wanted to be somebody who really, it brings enthusiasm. I want to be seen as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah, it's awesome. Well, maybe over time you realize that you're really much more comfortable being somebody that works more alongside people, right? And more of a mentorship capacity rather than like that outward leader.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's your goals. That's your way that you want to interact in the space. And that's not worse than being a leader, right? It's just a different role and it's got to be what you're comfortable with, right? So a lot of people can have certain personality tests, right? And I don't know how I feel about personality tests because you can change that picture.
Right.
The picture's up to you and it's what you're comfortable with. So yeah, can it change over time? Sure. But as long as we're highly clear and we're in it to serve others, we're not trying to cut other people down for us to get ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be okay. You're going to be great. And I find most people don't want to like disparage other people on the road. Right?
No, yeah.
It's pretty rare that's the kind of person you're working with, and it's probably not going to be in my program. So,
Can you give me a couple of tips or some questions on how to find that clarity?
sure. So here's what I would suggest to anybody in your following, and then you can do this, if you're listening to this later, think about and, give yourself a space of like a minute or two just to kind of really get centered, close your eyes and think. And I want you to start think about 3 words that describe the best of who you are. And these are words that like, they may be the best of who you are now or who you would like to be. And the 3 words that if I went and asked Alan, I said, hey, Alan, tell me about Justin in 3 words. These are the 3 words they'd say, and you'd be proud to have someone say that, right? So if I go, oh, man, I'd really love to be joyful. I'd really love to be a leader. I'd really love to be honest. Right? That's just for an example, right? And then let those 3 words really drive you in all of your interactions and what you do. So if what you're doing is not congruent with the 3 words that you picked, then maybe you shouldn't be doing that.
Okay, interesting. 3 words. So what are your 3 words?
Well, mine always tend to change. I love to, so my 3 words, I don't like sharing them as much because I don't want people to think that they.
All right, give me one of your clients. You don't have to say the name or anything.
No, I'll share mine, but I would love it if, definitely go do this exercise for you because there's great words. One of mine is bold.
Okay.
I love using bold.
Mm-hmm.
And true and leader. And those are meaningful to me because I kind of fancy myself a little bit more of an introvert.
Okay, me too. Yeah.
Originally.
Right.
And I don't know if that comes across to people or not, but I struggled with the idea, like a lot of people, with like getting up and being speaking in front of people and directing and being seen as that person that people could go to. But that's what I wanted to be, and I knew I could be that. So by embodying that, hey, I'm going to be bold here. It gives me that boost of confidence and being able to be, again, it gives you that clarity just knowing who you want to be.
Right.
And so when I first started one of my first businesses, right, I used networking, like, face-to-face networking as one of the ways that I built that business. Well, going to a room of strangers to go ask them to, support my business or whatever would have been something crazy to me when I was younger, right? It's not something I would used to. But before I go in, I go, bold, right? I'm bold. I'm a leader. I'm true. And then the conversations are just easier, right? Because I'm going to go be who I'm meant to be. This is the best version of me.
Okay, cool. And then do you repeat it to yourself? Do you put it on the wall? How do you?
So I would recommend to anybody I'll do strategy sessions. If someone gets on the phone, we might do this exercise. And I always say, hey, look, we've all got a smartphone. We're all using them for our alarms. Go set yourself an alarm for 10 a.m. With those 3 words. And just say, hey, you look at it and says, oh yeah, I'm going to be bold today. I picked 10 a.m. as arbitrary. People have different battle rhythms, but 10 a.m. is like right before lunchtime. You might be starting to kind of, past your peak productivity for the day. Maybe there's another time for you, like whenever time you normally kind of run out of that energy, right? Hey, set yourself an alarm that reminds you, put it on the wall, put it somewhere, right? Share it with your family. Tell them this is who I want to be, right? Even if it's something crazy, like, hey, before I've never really been enthusiastic, right? That's one of your words, right? Well, I'm going to start being that way, right? Tell people this is who I am. You don't have to, right? That's your words, whatever you're comfortable with. But like, especially if you have a spouse, go tell them, right? Share with them. Tell them the same exercise. Hey, what do you want to be, right? And you get a lot of energy and clarity out of that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you tell other people, then if you're not behaving that way, they can actually help you. Or if they tease you about it, then that'll help you as well. Either way, you get the motivation.
Comfortable with you. Not everybody's comfortable sharing with that. I've had people on the phone who are like, they're a little bit more close to the chest. It takes them some time.
Yeah.
They're your words. And ultimately you've got to decide, hey, this is who I want to be. You chose that. And I never judge anybody for the words that they chose, especially if most people are choosing very inspirational words for them.
Right.
And they can change over time, right? Maybe next week you call me and it's a different word, because I've had a tweak in the way that I want to operate, and I never, you can change it week to week, you can change it year to year, however you want to do it, or you can stay with them. It depends on what you want it to be for you, right? Because like I said, we can change that picture. So.
Yeah, I mean, you asked that question, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I have no clue what my words are.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Maybe we should offline. We can sit there and we can do that exercise and we can come up with it. It's not as hard as you think. I think most people, once they have that space, you give yourself a few minutes to think, and then just kind of rolls off. Just go with what's the first thing that comes to mind, and that's it.
Yeah.
You don't have to overthink it. Right.
Yeah.
I had one person who had one, like, I can't remember the 3 words, but they were all kind of relatively around integrity. Right. And so he was a little bit like, it seems like the same word. They were enough different. I was like, hey, these were the ones that were meaningful to you. Right. And there's enough, a little bit of an angle that you can certainly attach meaning. Right.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I said, hey, these are your words. Right. If you want to change one, you can.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I don't know. It's for me, it's not going to be that hard to come up with the words, but it is going to be to keep coming back to them and keep remembering them. Because whenever I have a setback, all of the self-help stuff and all the motivational stuff, all that stuff, I just chuck it out the window. It's like, I'm going to go into my little hole. I'm going to feel bad for myself for 3 days. Just leave me alone. I'm in a bad mood.
My personal example, right? Like, that could be easy, right? I go into an event and, like, I'm a coach, right? I want to help people. I want to be able to bring someone into my practice that I can really serve. I go through the process of, meeting them at the event. Hey, here's my business card. This is cool. We schedule a call. And I go, hey, let's book a call. Let's talk after this. And they go, no. Well, I could let that affect me, or I could go, bold, true leader, move on to the next person, right? Or address that there if maybe there's something I've done wrong or whatever. But if I allow myself to be disconnected from that clarity, then what am I doing? I'm not making the next call.
Right.
And I'm not serving the next person I can serve. Right.
Oh, that's a good one. I'm not
selling the next house. I'm not making the next trade that's going to allow me to take care of my family.
Right. Exactly.
Or somebody to take care of their family. Right. So, yeah, I could be disconnected that way. I can allow those things to help me. But if I'm going to go back to my words and do this again as a habit, as a system, as a structure, put it on the wall if that's where you need it.
Yeah.
Have an alarm on your phone. Make it the background.
Right. Because not only does it help you get started, but then, like you said, when there is a setback, when there is a rejection of what sort, anything that is a pebble in the way and you trip over it, you can decide to go the negative route, or you can decide, hey, let me focus on what I want, one of my words, and then it brings you almost instantaneously back to what's important.
Yeah.
And
all the habits, of course, are important, and they're almost required for anybody who's going to be successful. But for me, and what was the deal, this was the game changer for me when I started focusing on it, was clarity. And you can always fall back on clarity. Right? Some people need the energy, right? The energy is what drives them. Some people need the productivity. They need to know that they're making the progress. Some people need to be able to, raise that necessity or be more courageous, right? But for me, clarity is one of my favorite topics, because I can fall back on that. Maybe I'm not being productive today, but I can go, I said I was going to be a leader today.
Right. And you have that cognitive dissonance there as well, because if you keep telling yourself something and then you don't act like that, your brain is naturally being like, hey, there's something wrong here. You don't feel easy until you fix it. until you
Yeah, and
act
that's
the
what
way
it's all
that you said you're
about.
going to
That's
act.
what that's the part that, again, that's why I make it basically, it's the first step into the program. When I'm working with somebody, I'm going to make sure that you're highly clear. Like, so you're
Right.
going to come out of my practice, depending on what programs you go through, I'm going to make sure you're clear. You're
Sweet.
going to have that after talking to me.
Sweet, sweet, sweet. So what type of people do you help?
So in general, I work with military veterans who are getting out of active duty, and that's a really scary time. I was that way, back in 2012, 2013. I don't know what I'm going to go do. I've only had military experience, right? I was in college, so I had some, college type jobs, but nothing serious,
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm coming out with military experience. I don't know how to translate. I don't know what I'm going to do. Um, I don't know how to interview, right? In the military, especially as an officer, they kind of try to train you not to be so like talk about yourself, right? It's really more mission and people focused.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, you're going to go into an interview and talk about how great you are,
Yeah.
right? It's just a little bit odd. And I'm not, that's not knocking the interview process. You got to do it for a reason. But it takes that kind of like, how can I be very clear, right? And you can be like me and you think you're clear on something because maybe you've done some research. Oh, this kind of translates from my experience really well.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not clear about what like maybe your value set are, or what that job's going to allow you to go do, or what's going to be important to you when you're there. And you're like me, and even though I got a great opportunity, I wasn't happy there, right? There was a different set of values and the way they managed people, and it just wasn't the right fit. And I was miserable, even though I had a great job for a great company with great people working there, right? It was just a different mindset. And so I love to help people that are going through that phase of transition. Military, maybe you're thinking about changing jobs, maybe you're thinking about getting into trading, right? But you got to be highly clear on what you want to go do. You got to have the system that's going to allow you to be professional, like be successful, right? That's what I love about my program, is because we can talk about a very specific strategy for you to go get what you want. Maybe you're going to use day trading, but you're going to have to use the habits that I'm talking about if you actually want to get there.
Right.
Right? I can map up for you right now on this board how we're going to make $1 million in the next 12 months. But most people won't have the habits and structure in place to actually go do the things that allow them to do it. And so that's what the power of my program is. And it starts with clarity.
Sweet, sweet, sweet.
So
Cool.
I love to work with, again, veteran space, but I mean, truthfully, professionals, business owners, entrepreneurs, anybody that's going to need that level of structure, and they're going to need that support. They're going to need someone there with them that they can share things with, because sometimes, like, like I might want to go do this goal, but my friends they might think that's kind of weird. Right. It might be like me, where I was running a trade business and I said, hey, I want to go be a coach. And that might be some weird to some people, right? Because they're kind of comfortable with where you are. Well, when you're working with a coach, and this is what I like, hey, whatever you want to do, I'm going to, like I said earlier, let's go see if we can make that happen. Is that realistic? Is that something you want? Is that connected with your mission? What is your mission, right? How do we need to define that? Great, let's do it.
Right.
And that's the power of working with a high performance coach. You're going to have that clarity. You're going to have that camaraderie of having somebody that you can be open and honest with, that's not going to tell you you're dumb. Right. Right. And there's nothing that's too crazy. Hey, I've been making $50,000 a year working the line, for the last 10 years. I want to make $1 million next year. Okay, great. How are we going to do that? And let's work through it.
Right. Okay. And how do people find out about you?
Well, they can certainly follow me on Facebook or Instagram so it's Charge Forward is the handle. So CHARGE forward. Or you can go to my website, www.thechargeforward.com. So that's THE chargeforward.com. You're able to follow me there. I have a blog. I put out content. It connects to all of my other social media pages, so you can find all my content there. And certainly, if it's something that I can help you with, I'd be happy to hop on a quick high performance traction call. If you've got something that you're struggling with on a goal and you just need some help and support, I'll put you in a totally sales-free zone where if I can get you moving in the right direction, I'm happy to do that. And you can schedule that call there at the website.
Awesome. Great. All right. Well, Justin, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your service. Thank you so much for all you do, and thanks for helping out our military folks. Because what you're saying is that they go through boot camp. They're normal people first, I guess. They go through boot camp. They get trained in a certain way to think and behave, and then they're dropped back into the real world, and it's like a whole different set of rules, and then they kind of almost have to have boot camp to re-assimilate into the normal world.
It'd be like somebody who was raised in Texas and they dropped them into Paris, France tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like some people speak English, but it's different, right?
Right.
Like maybe the UK is a better example because they speak English, but it's different, right? The cues are different. Like, it's
Yeah.
not that you can't perform well. It's just going to be like, it's going to be weird and difficult. And it can be hard.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's
appreciate
what I
it.
love to do. Thanks for letting me on, by
Yeah.
the way. And thank you, Alan, as well, for what you do, serving your audience and helping people get and achieve their goals by using your practice and strategies through trading, which is awesome. I love Moneyball. If anybody's using Moneyball as an example, I think that's great. So, I love that. That's the best one. I'm a numbers guy myself, from a logistics background.
Awesome. Cool. All right, Justin, thank you so much for stopping by.
All right. Thanks,
All
Alan.
right.